Kia Telluride, Hyundai Sonata, and the Genesis G90, all magnificent world-class vehicles that have one thing in common. And no, it's not that they're from Korean car manufacturers. Rather, they were built by Germans. Well, they have something else in common in that they were totally new product programs, so the Germans that are now in residence at these Korean car manufacturers had more say on what these vehicles could be. Now, let's change that equation. Same Germans, but what happens when they update a vehicle that's been around for a while? A running start is called for here, considering 4,806 pounds. Yes, a V8, yes, plenty of torque. However, it comes in pretty high in the power band. It's not about this car is slow. It ain't slow, it never was. It's the power delivery. I speak to friends of mine, and I'm in the minority about this. I prefer the V6 twin turbo in the G90 because of its power delivery. The torque is developed so much lower than this. Look at the engine speed this thing needs to get to pull you out of a corner, passing, any of that kind of stuff. Where the V6 twin turbo delivers power in a different way, I would argue makes it a more usable engine in this big of a vehicle. And the dirty little secret here, there's virtually no difference in the torque between the two engines. Even Genesis would admit you're not going to see many of these coming and going on the streets of North America. For that matter, you're not going to see many of these things coming and going on the streets of cities around the world. And I personally think that's a good thing. But to understand presence, we need to discuss vehicles you do see and you do know. The S-Class, the standard bearer of this segment, that's about 2 inches shorter in wheelbase, about the same length. The BMW 7 Series, it's about 2 inches longer in wheelbase and about the same length. And then for grins and giggles, the Porsche Panamera, not at all a competitor, but that is a full 6 inches shorter in wheelbase and definitely shorter in length as well. So now that we know that, back to driving. Steering here is an entirely different matter. There's only one way to describe it, and that is over-boosted, to the point where it has the feel of lower Hondas, lower Toyotas, lower Hyundais. And here, even though it's a luxury car and that is the mission, there should be more feel, there should be more weight, especially in something of this price. That said, you can change it when you go into a sport mode. It doesn't really do a lot. It cleans it up a little bit, but not a huge change. However, all of that said, there is something I do need to show you. Do you have that person in your life, whether it be your grandfather, your father, or that very strange friend of yours that has a soft spot in his heart for circa 1970s luxury cars, specifically from Detroit? If you do, you definitely have seen this trick before. Take one finger here, and you go to a place like this, and you do the one finger steering test. Can't do it in pretty much any car today, with the exception of this one. So it is a welcome return of this old test. I'd like to point out that this is my bad arm, so I have a lower range of motion in this arm, so I'm particularly handicapping this test, and I'm still able to do it with a 2020 model year car. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game in mind, the options game, with today's contestant, something we have never featured in a round of this game before, a Genesis. This one is called a 2020 G90 rear-wheel drive 5.0 Ultimate. Translated to car guy speak, that is a V8 rear-wheel drive, two-wheel drive G90 for a manufacturer suggested retail price of $75,700. Now, before you go murder me and say, oh my God, that's a $76,000 Hyundai, here's the reality. A BMW 7 Series, the most basic one, is $86,450, and the most basic Mercedes S-Class is $94,000. Then, there are no options to be had here. It's not because this one wasn't fitted with options. It's got everything. It's kind of like how I sandbag you in Hyundai episodes. I always give you the price and there's nothing added because everything is standard. Things like a head-up display, 22-way seats, heated and cooled front seats, rear seats, adjustable rear seats. It's even got the smart cruise control. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But really what sets this apart, at least in my mind, They're looking at this as kind of a subscription. I don't mean like subscription where you buy the car at a monthly payment and you can give it back anytime. I mean a subscription in that all the data that's required to run the bits, the computers in here, like the maps or the Sirius satellite data like traffic, as well as fuel prices, all that kind of stuff, that is part of the whole deal here for 3 years. Genesis calls this the Genesis experience. I would call it, hey, it's a one-price deal, which I kind of like as a Costco shopper. On top of that, it includes the maintenance for 3 years. Then the only thing that we add here is inland freight and handling for $995 for a total retail price of $76,695. Now, further as a basis of comparison, if this was the V6 two-wheel drive, it would be cheaper by $4,000. Driving dynamics, or lack thereof, is puzzling in this case because it's something you and I haven't seen in a very long time. There's a waft, not a lean from side to side. There is a waft from luxury cars back in the olden times. And granted, that is designed in because that's the mission of this vehicle. It's not that there's modes that change things. Yes, there are, but there's personalities that change here in comfort. And yeah, there's a little bit of lean there, but even as I straighten out, the body wants to waft from side to side ever so slightly. It's something I haven't experienced in a long time. However, go into sport mode, get a bit more aggressive, and it cleans it up in a really big way. Like I can come around this turn here and I don't feel a lack of confidence. Granted, I feel this thing is gonna slide, but I don't feel a lack of confidence. There is a lot to do back here. The first thing you'd want to tend to is giving yourself a little bit more leg room, which you can do using these two buttons here. Leg room is this, move the seat forward, and then one can give themselves more knee room, move the seat back forward. Now that we've sorted that out, there's a couple of other things going on here. Number one is there's a vanity mirror here that's on both sides. Number two, there is a sunshade here. Now that is not the only sunshade. To deal with another sunshade, we have to transform the car from a 5-seater, which it currently is now, to a 4-seater. And that's where things absolutely change and become very flash. There are more controls for that seat, so if I wanted to, I could hit a button and control that seat with the controller here, very similar to like a Mercedes controller, or hit that button again, and then I can move the back seat, obviously forward, backward, up, down. Well, that's really more of a tilt, and then the seat back can go forward and backward, and then the headrest can go up, down, forward, and backward. This is a particularly nice touch, and while we're on the seats, there's lumbar support, and then you could either do cooled or heated seats. Let's stay with cooled today. And then there's that other screen. We can do it back here. Maybe we'll call it a sunshade. So let's open that, give ourselves a little bit more light. And then there are the screens, and think of this as duplicating the ubiquitous Hyundai Kia UX that's in the front of this car. It goes to the back of the seats. Now there's a switch for either side, so you don't have to have both on simultaneously. In this case, let's put both of them on. And the reason why we're doing that is this controller controls both. So if you do anything here, it controls it over there. So this goes into the menu, which has been updated for Genesis, so it's a little bit more flash, a little bit more intuitive. So let's switch these off, focus on the HVAC system. Here, it's a duplicate of what we get in the front, and that's temperature, fan speed, as well as airflow, what vents it's coming out of. And then there's some power outlets back here. There's one here for USB, a SIG plug here, as well as 2 SIG plugs there. And then switching gears on you a bit, let's go back to the outside and the sunroof. Here, this is fitted as standard, but it's a standard size glass sunroof with a sunshade. What strikes me odd is these are fancy cars. Every car that competes with it, yes, they're more expensive, but they can be had with a panoramic roof. This, not an option. I find that very strange because Hyundai Kia Group does many panoramic roof options. I would argue of all the cars that would need it, this would probably be the one that would benefit most from it. So think of that as feedback to the folks in Korea. Okay, we're at 30 miles an hour on the cruise, And I'd like to point out, there is no possible way for you to currently buy a vehicle that drives itself. Repeat after me, there is no such thing as a vehicle that drives itself in the model year 2020. Probably won't be for many years, even from Silicon Valley. That being the case, there is an update to the lane keep assist, I don't know exactly what Genesis calls it, where it's not just side to side. They're saying the vehicle will go or stay in the lane a bit more balanced, more in the center of the lane. You read the materials, it says it's better at centering, and so far it's doing that. So this is a 4-lane divided highway, and it wants me to put my hands on the wheel. It's working at 30 miles an hour, but let's pick it up to 35, which is the speed limit here. Hands off the wheel again, and it really needs to stay in the lane because there is a Land Cruiser over there I do not want to hit, and it actually is staying in the lane. Okay, I can't honestly tell you that it's better at staying in the center of the lane than the previous derivation of this system. I guess it's nice to have. It's a party trick you can show off to your friends. I know when I get folks who are not car people in cars and I do this to them, it scares the crap out of them. I've waited to the end to share that. And if I have my facts correct, that was not done by the Germans, that was done by the Americans about 50 miles from where I'm standing in their Irvine design studio. And what's that old saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder? Well, this beholder don't see no beauty there. And really doesn't detract from the overall goodness of what the vehicle was before and what it is now. Not really, and I understand you had the whole parameters of a mid-cycle refresh and you were trying to make the vehicle stand out. But really the best way I can put this is, as the guy who's got one, you really gotta love a big nose.